Looks yellow up there, but orange. It's supposed to be orange, so see that as orange. Does it look orange? Doesn't matter. It looks, yeah, yellow. Welcome to Broken, Creative Mornings. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks, Zeba, for having us here. This is very intimidating and fancy, concrete, wood, all this. Anyway, a little nervous, it's true, but you'll be fine. You'll be fine. That's what everybody keeps telling me. This thing shoots lasers, so if I kill anybody, I apologize. So hi, I'm Pat Castaldo. I just quickly, like, who am I? Why am I here? I have no idea. Silly's really cool. She invited me. But basically, I moved out west when I was 17 in a little town in Olympia up on Puget Sound. I went to school for computer science and journalism, not graphic design, not making small products and selling them. I went for computer science and journalism. But through a turn of events and being in Olympia around the same time as Riot Grrrl was happening and grunge was happening, you end up being involved with bands. But as someone who can't play bass at all, despite trying, and whose songs were all about bad dating, I did something else. I started selling stuff online in about '99. And I've worked primarily with independent artists and musicians, because that's who was there in Olympia. And so in '99, we started Buy Olympia, me and my partner Aaron, who's here. We started that because there was, at the time, no other place to sell online. Anyway, we were there for I was there for 16 years, and then the call of more than 5 places to eat and a vibrant community of people doing here brought us down to Portland about 8 or 9 years ago. And so we've been here, and we opened an art gallery, because that's what you do when you move to Portland, and you find other hobbies and you find other interests and people, and I would never have guessed when I was 17 that I would be in a gang devoted solely to playing pinball, but I am. That's Portland. Anyway, so Broken. Silly gave me a list of themes. This is like about a year ago. She's like, you want to do a Creative Mornings talk? I was like, yeah, I do. And then she gave me the list of themes and Broken, and I was drawn to Broken because I feel broken like all the time. No, I do. I'm 42. I'm a little overweight. Like, I get tired a lot. I don't exercise like I should. I've grown a beard to hide my double chins. Like, it's kind of like a lazy / thing. I get distracted when part of working in creative nowadays is like you have to post to Facebook. I log on to Facebook to post something for work, and I get distracted. I mean, it's like I'm broken, it's broken something. We're all broken in some ways. And I started like, okay, what are all the things that are broken? Oh, I could come and I could give this cool talk about everything that's broken. Push doors, Comic Sans, like all this stuff that is just broken to its core. And a designy one, that'd be great. I could do design stuff, people would eat it up. Or I could get all serious, because Jesus, there's a lot of broken stuff in the world right now. I mean, like, seriously broken stuff. Like, not just design problems. We as a society and culture are dealing with things that feel unprecedentedly serious. And in the 90s, going to Evergreen, like, political correctness was the norm. It was something we were learning and dealing with, and honestly, the things we're facing now are nothing that I thought wouldn't have all been solved by now. But yikes, those things are way too heavy for a Creatives Morning talk, especially for me. And there's a lot of great stuff. There's a lot of not broken stuff. Like my 11-year-old son, like enjoying Astoria and just breathing it all in. So it's like, this is a much better way to start a Friday than dealing with heavy, broken stuff. But back to business, I'm supposed to come to talk about broken stuff, so I will. I want to talk about the thing that I see all the time, and that's this culture of theft. It's like increasingly people are, I'm still getting used to this, sorry. Increasingly, people are taking stuff that isn't theirs and claiming it as their own. And I'm not talking like a loaf of bread or car break-ins. I'm talking about ideas. I'm talking about creative output. More and more, there seems to be this presiding sort of mentality online in the world out in front that is, I'm entitled to your creative output. You made that song, I'm going to get to listen to it whenever, however I want. And it's not just songs, and it's not just art, it's everything. And it's not just one or two people, it's an entire sort of culture of people saying, this is okay, I can take your idea, I can take your funny t-shirt slogan, and I can do it in a different font. And then it's my idea. And they pass it off as their own. And what seems crazy to me is that as a culture, we're by and large okay with this. I mean, we're not individually. We all experience that outrage, like, I can't believe he took this. Yeah, that's awful. But then 2 days later, we're on to the next outrage. And so there's that baseline of theft that seems okay. Like we can take it and maybe it's fine. And maybe, and this is where as I start thinking about it, because I had a long time to think about this stuff, is maybe that's how culture works and we shouldn't get bent out of shape about it. And so I have a bunch of examples about how fast and how pervasive this stuff is and how it's sort of changed over the last 20 years. And I want to walk through some of these. And now these examples aren't ones I just like found on the internet. These first few examples are ones of people I know and people that we've been affected by. So back in 2003, when we were in Olympia, we came up with this shirt. Our friend Sarah Utter designed this Reading is Sexy shirt. And she made it, and we printed like 72 of them. And we're like, great, let's hope we can get our money back and sell this shirt. Well, then it was on TV. And this is apparently someone from a TV show. I don't know if any of you have TV or know what that is. But it's a thing that shows shows. But anything, the minute this happened, the minute it's on TV, it's like at the time we were it was a side project that we were doing by Olympia. We would ship maybe 10 orders a day, maybe 18 on a good day. And so I was down there shipping orders, and I refreshed the order screen, and all of a sudden, like I'd shipped all 20 orders for the day. I refreshed, and all of a sudden there's another 20 orders. I was like, oh crap. We wrote all our own software because there wasn't other stuff. And so we refreshed, I was like, it's probably broken, and just showing me the orders again. And so I printed, and no, these are different orders. And I refreshed, and I refreshed, and I refreshed. And because of the power of TV and getting that out there into the culture and this sort of slogan, we ended up selling like 1,000 shirts that night, more than we had. And it took a while for the copycats. Again, we started in '99, and this was 2003, so that's 2 or 3 years before Etsy, before Shopify, before a lot of those things were out there that make it easier to sell online. So the barrier to entry to copycat and then get out there was a lot lower. But let's flash forward 10 years to January of this year, and my good friend Will Bryant came up with this ribbon, and it exploded. It's one of those things that all of a sudden people share, like, this is funny, and you got to give it to people who are in their offices all day. They just want to laugh. And so this ribbon was funny, and then all of a sudden, instead of taking, it being on TV or whatever, it just spread quick. And then within days, you could search for the slogan, which previously wasn't something that would come up. And you see hundreds of copycats, bootlegs within hours. And some of them are great. Like some steal from other memes, some just like search for ribbon icons. Like it's really fast how quick it can happen. I got a text in November, have you seen this shit at Target? From a friend, not Ryan, but like, and Ryan will be the first. My friend Ryan will tell you right off, like he didn't invent animals in suits, putting animals in clothes, but his drawings, however you say it here, drawings, they kind of set sort of a standard for how animals in suits should be. I don't know. And it happens in all walks of life, not just at Target. But Panic here in town, they started a game company, and they created this game called Firewatch, and it's great. And they had Ollie Moss do the art, and the art's there on the left, and it's this beautiful sort of firescape, and it's like, you see that, and you're like, that's a beautiful image, like universally. Well, somebody at State of Washington Fire Department is like, that is a beautiful image. It's just what it's like. I'll flip it, throw some text on there. I hear letters and state shapes are cool. Boom. A state agency, though, and this is like from the cynical part of me, it's like, they should know better. Like, they know how stuff works, that you have to pay for everything, you got to fill out forms, you got to fill out RFPs, all that. But somehow this image, this beautiful image, is like, it's fair game. And this isn't the first time this happened to Panic. That was this year, but 10 years ago, they created this little icon of the truck for their FTP client. People don't even use FTP clients anymore, but this truck has lasted. And so they had like a really good attitude about it. I mean, I think whenever your work is stolen, you feel a little hurt. But if you get too mad and bottle it up, you're like, ah. So Cable like invented this word, funcinating. Like, this is interesting, people taking it. But they had like 24 examples of people just stealing the logos and putting them all over their own stuff as their own. And it comes back to this sentiment. It's like, well, I don't know, it's just random stuff I find on the internet. Like the internet is just there. It's your stuff to take. Now, some of these examples I showed, some of them were about people trying to earn a profit off it. And others were just like, that's cool, I want to use it. But this excuse, like, oh, it was on the internet, it's fair game. It's like, that's not an excuse. Like, everybody should know better. And maybe that's what's broken. My friend Gemma, and this is another, like, this happens to Gemma every time she tweets or puts something out into the world. So she created this comic, and within an hour, there's like a meme generator, or somebody just types it into some awful font device, and it's stolen and repurposed without credit. I mean, and it doesn't just happen with the slogans or the jokes she's saying. It also happens with the illustrations. People want to share something that's funny, but in Gemma's case, a lot of it, they cut off her name. Like her name's at the bottom of that, like, no, that's not important, that's not part of it. And it happens constantly. And this transference happens once she puts it on the internet, someone strips her signature, the things are gone. Like the context is gone, whose it was is gone. I mean, anybody can tell, and all her fans will be like, I saw your thing on this because I can tell your style. But there's this sort of rampant theft happening, and it happens, like the internet term is at scale. Like people steal stuff at scale. And so there's even factories in a way, or people whose jobs it is to steal stuff at scale and share it. And so there's just a couple here of like the fat Jew and the other guy and meme curators. Like in general, this sort of stealing of ideas, and you know, he apologizes like, oh, I never meant to do it. I never meant to not give credit. I just intentionally cut their signature off and shared it as my own. That was an accident. I slipped on the Control-C, Control-V. But tons of accounts do this, and there's usually no attribution. And even accounts, and here's the thing, is like, it comes down to this thing, it's like, well, yeah, I mean, he steals everything, but it's funny, right? Like, this is good. He's posting good stuff, so it's fine. And that's that okay. Like, yeah, this is a baseline level of like, stealing's okay because in this case, it's funny. All right, and so I'm going to talk for a second about nerd stuff just because that's a little bit where my heart is. But this idea of like baseline cultural appropriation being okay is you've got Samsung and Google versus an Android versus Apple. This phone on the left with the keyboard and everything, that's what Android was going to look like until the phone on the right came out. Like this was a pre-release Android, and then you see the iPhone, and then what happens? Everything changes. People who said the iPhone wouldn't work now are saying, oh, well, no keyboard is obvious. So like they mock it, and then it becomes part of what everybody uses. And it's like, well, you know, okay, you could say that's the technology, everything's changing, like there was a move towards screens, they were there at the right time. Yeah, but it's not just the keyboard stuff. We talk about icons, seamlessly ripped, like, oh, how else are you going to draw a phone if not white at this angle with a green background? I mean, that's been the universal symbol for phones for all times. Nothing says photographs like daisy, sunflower. Like, oh, well, sunflower's the only thing people take pictures of. I mean, come on. How else are you going to do this stuff? And everybody's contact book has a silhouette of people on it and is bound in a weird orange leather. That is just, I mean, they weren't copying, that's just how things are. I mean, it doesn't end there, and I could do this all day, but the phone at the top is a pink rose gold iPhone, and the one at the bottom is a Samsung one. And there are still people who defend this at a base level. It's like, well, what other color should phones be? Any color? And it's like this theft, like here's a great example of a theft that runs the entire stack. I mean, like just from like, oh, your phone looks like a good idea. Oh, these icons, how could you do better? And yes, rose gold is what people want. That's what we're going to sell them. And none of this is new. This is the first iMac, and then within a year, there was I forget what it was called, thank goodness. But none of this has happened before, but the world had never seen a blue computer prior to that iMac. And the reasoning is sometimes couched in this one, and this is like one of those real core ones of like this culture of theft is, well, it should be cheaper, or, you know, it should be free. Like, I don't think I don't think you should have to pay for that or that much. I don't want to pay an Apple tax, or I don't want to pay $1 for a song. Like, that's too much. It should be free. And this idea that things should be free, it's like, okay, right? I mean, it's out there. Like, come on. Whose ideas are they anyway? What do they count? But it doesn't stop here. It doesn't stop at just copying products. It starts transcending. So we're building, right? Like, we've got a layer of cultural theft that we're just all used to. I mean, how many people use Samsung phones or Android, like, complicit in that theft? Not to diss anybody carrying those phones. There's good reasons to. They are cheaper. It's open. Whatever excuse you have, but there's that baseline of cultural theft that's happened. And maybe that is what culture is. But boy, when you notice it, you can't stop noticing it. There's also entire platforms built on this culture of theft that people use and are popular. And I'm not saying they're bad, but these are all free platforms that are entirely built on this idea of you find things on the internet that become then yours the minute you post them, right? Like, oh, I shared this. This is me. This is my work. Christopher Columbus found America. I found this funny meme. Like, it couldn't happen without me. And that's, I joke with my wife that, like, Pinterest is theft. You're on there all the time. It's like, no, I like Pinterest. I was like, yeah, but they don't have a factory with 5,000 nice bathroom somewhere in the Middle West that they're just taking pictures of. And it's like, yes, it is a great idea for things, but at a baseline, it's like all of a sudden all the context is removed. Whose bathroom is this? I don't know, I found it on Pinterest. Whose t-shirt is that? Oh, it's really funny, it's from Facebook. It's like, no, they don't make t-shirts at Facebook. So, t-shirts. Adam J.K., this guy's awesome. Now, here's someone who lives in New York and is, I don't know if he would describe himself as this, but he's like a practical artist and humorist. Although I don't know anybody who calls themselves a humorist. I believe he is one, so I'll label him. Thanks, Adam. He built his following on these platforms. He's put his art out on these platforms, and he's maintained a sense of ownership. But one thing he notices, because he's part of these communities, is this. And it's like, I don't know how many people know what this is or not, but it's from Joy Division cover, Unknown Pleasures. And this is a fun rabbit hole, so we'll go down it. So that cover came out in 1979. Oh yeah, 79, says on the slide. You don't need me. Came out in 1979 by Peter Saville. It's arguably one of the most famous parodied covers of all times. I also love Peter Saville's name. It just sounds designery. Like, if you had a name like Saville, you'd be whipping out some rad stuff. It's like, oh, well, he must have drawn that, and he brought it together, and it's like, nah, not so much. That he took from an image that was inside a British encyclopedia from a 1970s PhD thesis about 50 successive radio pulsars being recorded and mapped for the first time. And then, so he borrowed. And so this idea of borrowing is okay. His platform was different, but so is it any different? I mean, this is one of the most famous record covers you've ever seen, and it's stolen. It's a piece of stolen art, right? It was borrowed from a magazine. And what's funny about this is, and you're probably reading it, is, and I love this, is the guy who did it had to go buy the album, which is great, right? Like, I mean, he's like, hey, did you know your stuff's being used on this album? No, great. So he went and he bought it, and he was stoked. And so then you have that, and then let's follow this one step back to Adam and that t-shirt, and here's Peter Saville, who also owns the t-shirt of the shirt that was based on this other drawing. I don't know if the original physicist has it, but I love this. Like, he had seen this on Tumblr so many times, and like Adam had seen it on Tumblr so many times, and so many different mock-ups, that he had created a new work of art for it. Art can be in quotes, because you can agree or disagree, but he was making a cultural statement about it, for sure, that it was on Tumblr, and this is what he saw. And this one's been ripe for parody, but then, like, it comes back to then Peter wearing that shirt, which is just, anyway. That's an interesting case of theft. I mean, in the end of the day, like, seems cool. This idea that borrowing, it's not new. And in an interview, Peter Saville even said, he's like, I didn't know what that image was. I didn't know if it was copyrighted. I just saw it and had to use it. But now all that stuff happens at a much greater speed and a much greater volume, and everybody is creating these stories. And there's platforms to create and share things, not as epic as album covers per se, but they are creating these things. And this idea that, though, that things are online doesn't abdicate you of responsibility. This just came out Monday. The next version of Mac OS, and this is just like how easy this stuff has gotten, has Siri. And you can literally say, Siri, show me some pictures of Lake Tahoe. I want to use them in my business report. And it pulls them up, and you drag them right over. And there's that disclaimer, which it says, you know, they might be subject to copyright, but I don't know, you figure it out. I'm sure you will. Like, but again, like that's the OS saying, like, it's okay to take stuff you find off the internet and use it however you want. And so this culture of theft, is it though how we actually create culture? I mean, like maybe, you know, like I'm down on it. I get mad. I mean, I get really angry and I try to let it pass. But like when I see my friends getting ripped off, I'm like, friends keep getting ripped off. Then you sort of step back and you're like, all right, borrowing ideas, inspiration, all this stuff, maybe that is how culture is. And it's like, it's definitely how one of the like hottest things in our culture is, and that's these idea of memes. And so while something like reading is sexy became an idea for a shirt, in a way it became a meme. All those copies were people reflecting on it and using it themselves of these recycled ideas. And memes as a whole are one of these things. Like, so here's another quick one. Like, Hillary has this sick burn, right? Like, haha, I showed you. And it was funny. I laughed. I thought it was good. I didn't know where that was from. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's a thing on the internet. And I was like, oh, I had no idea. Yeah, Snowden did it. Oh, he did. So I was like, what is this stuff? Okay, they did it to that awful pea guacamole in the New York Times. Right? Like, oh, yeah, delete your account. Like, I should have Googled for delete your account t-shirts, but I'm sure they're already there and shipping to you now. I mean, did Dave Stroop invent this against the lunacy of the New York Times? I don't know. No, I do know. He doesn't. He didn't. I have slides. So this is some guy on Reddit, you know, late night grumbler back in 2012, said delete your account, problem solved, to this long thread, and it got shared, and I actually don't know how Reddit works because I'm old. But like it got shared, and this is a place where a lot of these things come from. But that wasn't even the first place. If you keep Googling down the Google hole, 2008 was the first usage on Twitter. And you know, none of this is new. When I was a kid, we were in elementary school saying everything that Pee Wee Herman said. We were saying everything that the church lady said on Saturday Night Live. So in this case, it's like somebody says something funny and it goes out there, you share and repeat. That's sort of how you communicate, right? Like there's this common bond that we share, and it's words, and in this case, more and more, it's memes, and it's 140 characters or less memes. And our culture's littered with it. And here's an aside, I thought it was funny, if you search how do I delete my account, I thought the Hillary thing would come up first, but no, it's like, actually, do you want to get off these platforms? Yes, please. So theft is culture, and culture is theft. When does it cross the line? And I want to share another example, and this is somebody I don't know, but I really admire their work, and that's Gene Julian. During the Paris attacks, he posted this one, and I mean, it's awesome, and you can see why. All of a sudden, the minute it was posted, within an hour, got hundreds of retweets, shares, likes, people sharing it. But what's funny is, within an hour, a Twitter account, therealbanksy.com, shared it. So all of a sudden it started getting attributed towards Banksy, that he made this and shared it, I don't know, on Gene Julian's Instagram. He has access, I don't know. But he put this, and like Banksy even put out a statement, he's like, I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter. Of course, with Banksy, you don't know if he is or not, but point is, this image spread like wildfire, and we know why. And so the internet police were like, hey, everyone who didn't attribute it, that's not yours, that's Gene Julian's, you can't do that. And there's always those people who will, and they're trying to do the right thing, they'll fight for it. And I thought that Gene's response to this was really good. He's like, in this case, that image was about pain, how I felt. It was my response. It's like I want people to share it. I want people to show solidarity and peace and all that kind of stuff that makes you cry when you really think about it. Like, this is like a good thing from the heart that he's doing. And so in this case, that cultural theft, which maybe I seem like I'm railing on a minute ago, is like totally, in my book, a net positive, right? And he was fine with it. Everybody was fine with it. And then some asshole posted on Etsy. Not him. This person's here to just profit off it. This is not about a message of love. I don't know why people do this, but there's a lot of them. Part of it, and it's like, why do people do this? Well, part of it, I think why you're sharing in that moment of grief is because you want You want instant gratification, but you also want to be part of the conversation. You want to say, this affects me too. Like what happened, like that affects me. And the easiest way is like sharing this image. And I get it. Like you want to change your Twitter avatar to the color of the day or whatnot. You want to feel included. When your favorite celebrity dies, you want to post that picture that you got off the internet that someone made, someone took, someone was there at that fight in 1957 or whatever, Rumble in the Jungle. They were there and they took that picture. And I get it. You want to share it. You want to be a part of that conversation. But it does seem to cross the line when it's like you want to profit off that conversation. So it's like, is any of this stuff right or wrong? I don't know. I mean, like there's this whole concept of personal use versus creative use. And there's a difference, right? Like if I asked everyone, they'd be like, for sure. Like you saw a difference between those two slides. Like he's like, use it, share it. That's the right thing to do. Then there's somebody on Etsy, and it's not Etsy. It could be Zazzle or Cafe Press or any of 100 Squarespace or Shopify stores, stealing this image and using it for profit. And there's so many distinctions that it's like I don't even want to get back to it. I think back to my Android and Apple example. And it's like, even the most like flag-waving, Trump-supporting patriot has, like, make America great again by using a phone made in Korea that was, stolen from people in Cupertino. Like the ideas were stolen. Like that's, in a way, what America is, or what cultural appropriation is. That becomes our baseline. And it's weird. And because part of this is brands aren't people. Like, Samsung's not like a person. Taco Bell doesn't say funny things. Doritos aren't funny. Mountain Dew is not hip. Like, it is not a person. It's not hip. People make these decisions, like this copying, like the copying of the phone icons. Like, somebody did that. Somebody was sitting at their desk with their bamboo Wacom drawing the icon again. People make these decisions. And so, yeah, brands aren't people. And people are the actors in this cultural theft. And so sort of, I don't want to say I have any takeaways because I don't know if I do, but like that's like if you're an actor in that situation, what do? Well, my boss made me copy that icon. Let's talk to your boss. I mean, they're people, and there's people all the way up the chain. And just like brands aren't people, people aren't brands, right? No, they are now. I mean, boy, do they ever want to be nowadays. And a lot of those platforms, those free sharing platforms, are about building brand. And like, what's a brand? Well, a brand, like in the classic sense, it's Coca-Cola's red being copy-marked and trademarked in the swoosh, and like that's a brand in sort of the classic sense. But this idea that you tell a story and you're like I'm a brand, I'm Pat Castaldo, like this is how I act, like shit, am I a brand? I didn't mean to be. I don't want to be, but maybe I am. Friends have their giant head in a email. I'm sorry, Adrian. Maybe I am. So it's like this whole mix-up of like, what are brands, who are people, what do they do? Where do we go from here? It's a line from Buffy the Musical, if you're familiar with it. My son loves it, and so that's why there's a picture of him there. So where do we go from here? Like, well, the first thing is like, well, we can come up with rules. There's got to be some rules we can create to stop this, right? Like, don't steal other people's stuff. Like, that's the first rule. Well, that's some pretty biblical shit right there. I mean, like, that is one of the core rules. But here's the thing, there's already a ton of rules. I mean, there's copyright, trademark, patents, all that stuff, right? Like, they spent months in court on the Samsung thing. Urban Outfitters is a classic one who's gone to court several times or threatened to go to court over people stealing or them being stolen from or them stealing. I mean, the rules are there. We don't need new rules. I mean, they exist. And maybe they could be reformed, and maybe we could think differently about it, but the rules are there. And so it's kind of like, don't steal other people. It's like, don't be a dick. Like, that's the golden rule, in a way. So I don't know if we need more rules. We need more questions. I fast-forwarded through. We need more questions, I think. And I want to ask myself these questions whenever I do stuff. And so it's like, am I thinking critically about my use and intent? Like, why am I reposting someone else's Instagram? Like, Instagram reposts are a fascinating one for me because they defy sort of how the platform was meant to work. But I see people do it all the time. Like, hey, look at this. Here's a picture someone else took. It's on my feed now. You don't even have to follow them because I'll repost all the good stuff. So it's like, let's think about that. Like, critically, why are we reposting somebody else's Instagram versus saying, you should check out somebody's Instagram? I mean, I question these things a lot as a brand trying to, like, not me as a brand, but as someone who runs stores, like I run an art gallery, I run an online store, wholesale store. Like, I want people to buy our stuff at the end of the day. Like, I do. I think we make good stuff with artists, and I want people to buy it. But what's the right way to go about it? And what's the context that I'm sharing this stuff in? Am I trying to pass it off as my own? Am I trying to get this elusive credit, whatever credit is, for something that I am posting that I didn't make? And finally, like, what's my end goal? And this is a question really about this slideshow as much as even sharing anything. What are you trying to gain? Is it to make your friend laugh? Yeah. Is it trying to make you seem cooler? Maybe. I don't know, but it's a question I feel like you got to ask every time you sort of share something or that's not yours. And maybe you even need to ask it as you create and put stuff into the world. Like, what's my end goal with this? How does it affect all the other things? How is culture built on this sharing or my own work being out there? I'm not sure. No answers. That's it. So thank you. We got like 10 minutes if anybody has any questions. I can't allude to have any actual answers. Sir.
So I get patents and I go through that process, and everything is based on prior art, something that you look back and do the next variation. How do you, there's a limit on always doing something new, because you're always basing on the knowledge that has been done in the past. And there's a point where you're borrowing it, but you're taking that knowledge. And so you should never really be starting from zero again. Like if you're designing a car, someone created a carburetor already, so you use that within here. When does it become stealing, and when does it become the body of knowledge of the world?
Yeah, and so what he just asked, because I know like when you don't repeat the question, everybody just thinks you're talking randomly. He asked, when does it become versus like everything's based on previous art, the work we've done before. And this wasn't his question, but like we all use English. That seems to be a language that we got from somebody else. We're not all inventing our own language. There's these baselines. When does it become versus just advancing versus stealing, like stealing stuff? And it's like, in those examples that I shared, like, I don't know, some of them seem like stealing to me. They don't seem just based on the work of others. And it's, again, that fine line, like with the phone's a great example. If they had just made a touchscreen phone and used their own icons, and there were vendors that did this, Samsung was just the most egregious, and it paid off. They became the #1 smartphone vendor because they copied someone else's. So to me, that feels wrong. If they had just said, you know what, Apple's right, like touchscreen phones are better. I know everybody said keyboards would have to stay, but I don't know, there's a border, right? And you call it as you see it, and again, it's personal. Because the people on Cafe Press or Zazzle who are stealing Reading is Sexy with other clip art they find, is that theft? That feels way more like it. So, I mean, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I hope that was on one of the slides. But anybody have anything else? Who wants to go? Someone over here? Go ahead.
So some of this touches into issues like open source software and things like that, where a lot of the effort goes into making a sort of common good item that is, especially the software, builds a lot of these sites, right? So, and for me, I think a lot of the questions come back, how are you reimbursed for your effort? So a lot of those things are volunteer, but it's also someone scratching their own itch. So I guess my question is sort of how does kind of the common good and the common effort play into all this?
Yeah, and so he just asked about open source stuff and where does the common good and effort, and in case of open source, people are putting out software and then everybody's building on it. Like we wouldn't have the internet without the people working at Apache, for example. Or we wouldn't have a lot of the internet without Linus Torvalds doing Linux and making that type of OS available freely. And I guess I would come back to, like, when it comes to the open source stuff, is its intent. I mean, the intent is to share. If I'm making, like, if Gemma's making a t-shirt out of Pugs Not Drugs, her intent is to make you laugh, but also her intent is to make you maybe buy a t-shirt, right? And so the intent there is like, are we going against the intent? And the open source community would say, if you took my software, I said this is the terms on which you can use it, and if you then bottled it up and sold it as a Microsoft Internet server and didn't tell anybody, that would be against the intent. That isn't what they want. And so part of it is the intent, and a lot of these platforms, what they do is lose the context of intent. So not just like who's the artist that made it, but what did they want to do with it? What was their goal with it? Yeah. I mean, so that's like, for me, it's like, yeah, I use open source software. I think it's great. I'd love to contribute more if I could. Like, but you recognize it. You don't rebrand Apache, Pat Web Server OS. Like, you respect a certain level of things. You don't necessarily alter the headers that come back in the HTTP response to say like Pat OS. Like, no, you keep it Apache, you represent, you do those things you're supposed to. You include the software license if you're including it in software. I mean, you honor the intent of what people are putting the work out there for, I think. Anybody else?
You gave examples as big as Android and as small as just the average person on Pinterest. Which do you think is having the greatest impact, or should be addressed?
The Android stuff's being addressed, right? Like, those are rich companies that, like, they can fight it out, right? And the one's going to pay the other $1 billion. And it's like we saw, like, Apple's taken ideas from Android. Like, Apple's not a saint by any means in those regards. To me, it's more the personal stuff. It's like on the Pinterest and the sense of context, if I follow a Pinterest link and it links and you click on it, and like I get they're all supposed to be attributable back to the page, like that's the idea. Like why Pinterest thinks it's okay is like we're bookmarking these sites and we're leading you to those sites. I mean, they're intentionally becoming a gatekeeper between you and those sites and forcing themselves, in some instances, into a business relationship. You want to advertise on Pinterest so that people can see your bathroom? Like, come on. So, like, to me, that sharing and how we use those platforms is a way more interesting question, because I feel like we say it's kind of okay. Like, the benefit I get from all these images collected in one place, whether the person wanted them there or not, and their argument is like, well, you can request your images not to be shared. It's like, yeah, you just came in and made me do work. Like, you as a third party were like, oh yeah, you don't want your image shared? Fill out our web form. It's like, it's my image. Like, you're telling me I have to now do work to not share it? So it's like, to me, those types of things are the more interesting question. I'm not saying burn it down, but I'm just saying, like, let's think about how we use it. And it doesn't always seem right to me. Like, it's fine. I use it. Like, my bathroom is going to come from, if we eventually save up to remodel it, is going to come from the one with the nice subway tiles and the glass. And like, if I can save up, like, I'm not, and by no means am I a saint in those things. You do use those things, and you can't, in a way, can't even avoid them. Now, if you search for like beautiful bathrooms, and this stuff's on my mind because my bathroom's gross. I have a separate bathroom for my wife, and it's in the basement, so it's spiders. Anyway. But you put those things into context and you can't avoid it. So now if I type like beautiful bathroom, Google search, which always I felt provided context. There was a title, there was a sentence or two, there was the site right there. Like, context was shared. Like, they did it. Like, you could argue like, well, that's not right. They're crawling your site. It's like, yeah. And again, as a culture of society, we're like, yeah, that's okay. Look at all the context they provide, and it links directly to the site. If you search for beautiful tile bathroom now, Pinterest comes up first. Not the one at the end of the tail. Not the person who created the picture of the beautiful bathroom. Pinterest did. So, I mean, and it used to be that like beautiful blogs did. The beautiful blogs were the ones in the middle. And I love beautiful blogs, like, but they often also attribute and give credit. And look at Pat's beautiful bathroom, or gross bathroom in this case. So I don't have a solution, but I mean, that's, go ahead.
Is anyone in a large scale doing PR campaigns of cited source? I mean, I don't see that.
Yeah, me neither. I don't want to do it. I mean, right? I mean, like, I think people are in that groundswell. Like, every one of those early examples of my friends getting ripped off, like, there's agents who like and respect those people's work who go and say, hey, you didn't draw that. Or, hey, Gemma, did you see this yoga place stole your yoga thing, rewrote the caption in a different font, used your illustration? Like, it's crazy. So no, I don't think there are large-scale attributions. If anything, the next version of Mac OS, it's like, give me some unattributable images, please. Like, anybody have anything else? It's 9:45. Sir. Oh yeah, I think, well, and that's the other thing. It's like, he asked like when something goes beyond what their idea is and then they don't want to become associated with it. Like you create something maybe and, let's see, the first example I think of is just like whenever a politician you don't like uses a song you wrote, right? Like that's a reoccurring like theme in life, I guess. I was going to say on TV, if anybody watches Veep, that show's awesome. Like that's a theme on that. But it's also in the real world. And so it's like, how do you disassociate yourself with those ideas? It's, I don't know, you speak up, I guess. You say, like, that has nothing to do with me. But at the same time, who's listening? You know? Like if you create something that's like, hey, that's mine, that's me. Like I made that. I have 400 Twitter followers. You'll never find me in the universe of the internet. Like, I don't know. But I do think that the interesting thing, which I didn't talk about in the talk, is this, like, there's also at the same time that everybody's stealing. And it's sort of this ground level cultural thing. There's also this, it's your fault. It's your fault. You're stealing. You're stealing. Like there's this rampant, like, you stole this from Banksy, Gene Julian. It's like, no, I didn't. Like there's a quick accusation, like, and finger pointing about that stuff. Sorry, it's rude to point. But it's interesting because all that stuff, I mean, there is a reaction that can be too strong to those things. And again, like for me, it comes back to like, ask questions. What did they mean by that? Did you know? Like sometimes the internet mob is a fierce beast, and I sometimes don't post stuff because I would not want to be on the wrong end of that, even if it's something I believe, which is, I mean, that sucks too. Anyway, anybody have any? Ma'am.
Yeah, I think that to compare two image, it's easy. Like you can compare like social media, like Facebook, Twitter, like they can just compare the image that someone upload onto their site with something they already have on their store, right? And then if it looks like something that they already have, they can always like attribute the link to the original or the first one who posts. So I think that they can totally have the capacity to do that.
Right.
It's just a problem of whether they take it seriously enough and whether you push it.
Yeah, and that's it. So what she's saying is like, we're living in a modern age. You upload a photo, the computers, the robots can figure out whose photo that is, right? Like Google can do reverse image search. We've seen that. Facebook could look and say, hey, this is a link that someone else shared first, or this is an image that someone else took. And I guess the counter to that, and it's like, you could be like, yeah, that should happen. That way, none of this stuff would happen. But you see on YouTube, that exists, right? If someone uploads something and it has like an ounce of music from a song, and it could be completely fair use, or completely in what most of us would be like, that's fine. That's incidental. That's not what it's about. They're not just ripping the album and putting it up there to share. They're doing something else with it, and that's a part of it. But YouTube can shut that off automatically and instantly silence that voice. So my fear on that, like, and the same with any of these platforms, is you give them enough power and you're like, okay, fiat, no more stealing. Then it's like, well, then what is out there? It's like, I don't want more. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I want. But I mean, it can be scary going the other way. So that's, technology can't, I don't think this is a technological problem by and large. I mean, because again, it's like, it's people who are doing these actions. And it's more just like, I don't know, something in first grade that we should talk about. Again, don't take other people's stuff. That means ideas.
Actually, that fits with my question perfectly. I'm thinking about, what I'm hearing you say is, this is, at least what I'm hearing in it, is I'm thinking about our kids. My oldest daughter is great at hand lettering. Like, she would be perfect to start a t-shirt shop. She's like already practically doing it. But it seems to me that the internet is amplifying what was already human behavior. People were copying paintings in the Renaissance, and that was like the right way to learn it, right? So what do we teach the next generation, either designers that we're mentoring or our own kids, about the ethics of copying and sharing? And like attribution, you know, my wife is a teacher, and she's always busting kids because she's got these great tools now for catching them stealing bits of other papers, you know, when not attributing ideas. What are your thoughts on the future of education around the ethics of this?
So he asked, what are my thoughts on the education of this? How do we teach the ethics of what's right to steal and what's not? And it's, God, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we're taught, a lot of we're taught, and like sometimes it's just saying that, and I do it to my mom, and I do it as a joke. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know you were at, like, she posted a picture of Ali on her Facebook, like, she's like, I love him, whatever. And it's like, my comment to my mom will be like, I forgot you were there and took that picture. And it's just like, that's enough, like for me, that's enough to jibe my mom. It's funny, she then likes that status because she knows I'm making fun of her. Like, that feedback loop is there. Is it going to stop my mom from posting pictures of Prince? No. I mean, it's not. But again, what is going to stop people? I don't know. Part of it's just having the conversation. I guess, like, we talk about why talk about broken. It's like, I felt like talking about this stuff just because I feel like people don't talk about it. Like, this nature of like Pinterest or Tumblr or those things, like there are lone wolf crazies out on the internet with rants and rants and rants about how awful this is and how illegal it is and there should be a class action suit and stuff like that. And I don't want to go that far. Like, I use it, again, like I've used it. Like I'm complicit in this. We're all, in a sense, complicit of this. So I don't know, education-wise. I feel like it's talking about it and asking questions. I know that's like a cop-out, but
To that point a little bit, and something that I see rampant in designers, and especially young designers, is just mimicking. Because it's easy, and there's this I want to compare, and I want to be great, and I want to feel important, so I'm just going to take that thing that I want to attribute myself to and like make it your own in some really cheap, easy way. And so just the idea of education, of just finding sort of your creative lineage of sorts and saying all the people that inspire you and then who inspired them. And so instead of just taking from like one train up of that thing, I think that shit's cool, find where all of that came from and then all of the inspiration will come around you. You know,
Yeah.
so I guess like that's how I would want to teach other designers.
if people hear that, it's great. Her response is like, how do you teach designers? And it's like, when you're a young kid, and I did this too, like, I love David Carson. I love what like Plasm did. Like, when I was designing record covers in my 20s, I was like, I want to make a cover as cool as Raygun Magazine did with that red tomato and Liz Phair. Like, that's all I want to do. And so, did I use degraded fonts that were the norm at the time? Of course I did. Did I even try to design ones that looked awful? Of course I did. But the idea of, in the teaching, is like, don't just pick this one that you love Draplin and you figured out that it was Futura bold, extra bold, like, in the color orange, like, boom. Like, but that's not enough. Like, ask why you like that. I mean, and that's the same thing. Like, ask why you like that. Who influenced him? That's the same thing that bands do, right? And that's the first thing a reviewer ever says is, if you love, I mean, it's like what all our music things say now. It's like, if you love Modest Mouse, you'll love Built to Spill or the Pixies, or they'll trace that tree for you, whether or not they knew it or not. Like, you ask Isaac from Modest Mouse, did you try to be like a new Pixies? He's like, no, I hate the Pixies. But you listen to it, and it's like you're influenced it whether you know it or not. It's the same with like online and style and design. Like, you're influenced with this. You're influenced by Pinterest culture or Tumblr culture before it. Or, I mean, none of these things are new and they're not. So yeah, education of like, again, ask questions. Where are these sourced from? Why do I like this? That's a hard one. Why do I like this? Like, some people ask that, and it's hard to answer.
So when I think of cultural appropriation, I think more of like ethnic and cultural appropriation. So how would you sort of use some of your critical lens on that, especially from the consumer point of view?
Yeah, well, all right, so she asked, when I think of cultural appropriation, she said that, I think of other ethnicities being taken and things, and how would you like apply this to that? And this is a good place to sort of end, is like, I once did a tweet that was like, so-and-so is my spirit animal. Like, that is what I tweeted, because I thought it was funny, and that's how I've seen that phrase used. Not realizing that that's like rampant cultural appropriation and isn't really cool to do. Like, it's not cool to say, you know, my motorcycle is my spirit animal. That is like, nothing's more like white 40s beard-wearing motorcycle rider than like, yeah, it's my spirit animal. Like, I don't have spirits, or I mean, I don't even have animals. I don't like pets. But that's a great example of like a cultural appropriation that's totally gone mainstream. And it's like, and I had the foresight to be yelled at. Like, you're like, you use that. I used it in a newsletter for the company. Like, so it wasn't even a tweet. It was like, we sent out this newsletter to 30,000 people, and I get 10 replies like, did you really just do this? Like, did you really just say that? And I was like, I did. I'm so sorry. And again, it's like, I didn't realize it. I didn't realize it was bad. I wasn't asking those questions. In that case, about language. But there's 100 other things of like those types of appropriations people just borrow and use and don't ask those questions. And so I don't want to make it sound like I'm perfect. I don't use Pinterest. Like I create all my own soap. Like it's not like that. It's just more like I know in my experience asking these questions of why, what am I trying to get? I mean, and sometimes, and maybe this is wrong, it stops you from doing things. Or maybe it just makes you think and you do it anyway, knowing that next time you say like this brand new t-shirt is my spirit animal, you'll think twice about it, right? Like that it's not a spirit animal, and you're trying to sell that with a crass cultural appropriation. So it's 9:56. Anybody have anything dying they want me to, anything else? All right, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.